I would say it's been a fun, entertaining college football season this year.
Oh yeah.
A number of surprise teams, a number of improved teams, number of disappointing teams overall. But obviously, someone has to be coach of the year. It's a long list of deserving guys. But I'm asking you, Eric, in your opinion, who should be coach of the year?
So I'm giving it to somebody I think we both really enjoy watching as a coach. I got to give it to Fran Brown, man. He turned a Q's
Really?
pro,
Nice.
yeah, dude turned
Nice.
a Q's program into a top 25 team.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at times Syracuse looked dominant this year. Shout shout out to Kyle McCord.
Hey, that offense was rolling, man.
It sure was, man. I know they finished fourth in the ACC, which hey, it happens. But for a first year coach, he did have a couple of bad losses. Shouldn't have lost to Boston College. Probably shouldn't have lost to Stanford. But he got Syracuse bowl eligible his first year. Uh,
Yep.
kind of completely re-upped the Syracuse as a football program.
If they win tonight, that's a 10-win season.
Exactly. And they beat a top 10 team in Miami.
Mm-hmm.
They beat a top 25 team in UNLV. They beat a top 25 team in Georgia Tech. The
Mm-hmm.
week after they came back and stomped out Michigan, wasn't it? Georgia Tech started out with Michigan, right?
No. Georgia Tech started with Florida State.
Florida State, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it
Mm-hmm.
was one of the two disappointing teams. I just couldn't remember
Mm-hmm.
which
Mm-hmm.
disappointing team.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I got to give it to Fran Brown, man. I
like
really
that.
like what he's got going on in Syracuse. Yeah,
I feel that. I like that. I love Coach Fran Brown. Um, when he was on Georgia's staff, all the buzz and all the hype about him as a recruiter, as a positions coach, as a defensive mind was always next level. He was always in high regard when he in his 2 seasons with us, and I'm super elated for him because he seems to be doing it the right way. Team building, going into the portal, getting some big guys. I mean, getting some big name guys from winning programs. You get a Kyle McCord who was basically ran out of Ohio State. Look at how this has turned out for him. He's had a hell of a season.
yep.
Jackson Meeks couldn't really ever get any rotation at wide receiver for the University of Georgia. He goes to Syracuse. He's one of the leading receivers in the ACC. Hell of a year. So we're pulling for him tonight. They play. Um, who are they playing against? You remember?
Washington State.
Yes, they play against Washington State. If they win, they're a 10-win season, man. That's a hell of a way to start off your coaching career. And he's from that area. He's it's just like one of those perfect marriages. So we're pulling for you, Coach Brown. Shout out to you. Salute. And as long as you don't play Georgia or Bama, we'll definitely be pulling for you. My coach of the year, Eric. My coach of the year is in the Big 12. I think everyone's gonna probably think I'm going leaning Coach Prime, but I'm not. I am going with Coach Dillingham of Arizona State.
Okay.
This team, Vegas odds, the media, hell, all of us completely counted out Arizona State this season. In his second year, he turns it completely around, figures out a way to get to the Big 12 championship, wins it, and he had a first round bye. Like that is phenomenal to go from where you were last year, where you were literally one of the worst teams out there for whatever reason, to this year being one of the best teams. And you got Scatterboo out there about to play a playoff game and talking his talk. I love it. Shout out to Coach Prime though, because he definitely turned it around. They almost had a shot at winning the Big 12, but hey, that's how it goes. You got to win when you win. Dillingham is my coach of the year, but I think both of our picks are well deserving. I would definitely say honorable mention will be Dan Lanning. Obviously, he's the only undefeated coach in college football right now.
Mm-hmm.
Salute to him. And I'm trying to think of somebody else. It's kind of hard to say like Kirby did a great coaching job, but he really did, in my opinion, because of that team turnover. And after losing the way they did in Tuscaloosa, that's a tipping point for a lot of these teams. So a large number of these teams would have quit, would have packed it up. Hey, coach, I'm redshirting, whatever. I'm quitting. But that team kept fighting.
Yep.
And then they get their tails whipped in Ole Miss. That's another breaking point. But they put it together. They beat Texas twice, win the SEC championship, and now they're in the playoffs. So I would definitely say, even though I'm not going to say Kirby is coach of the year, I will say he definitely did a hell of a coaching job, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And with those injuries, just with the amount of injuries on that team, yeah.
The problem is when you've got a guy like Kirby or a guy like Nick Saban, like it becomes the standard. Like, oh, Georgia won 12 games again. Yeah. So you never really get the look like, all of these other coaches do. It's expected of you at that point. Like if you're not winning 12 games, what are we doing?
Right. That's fair. That's fair. Well, I didn't put this on the run sheet, but Eric, who's their biggest disappointment? Which coach is your biggest disappointment?
I can't say Kalen DeBoer. I can't say Kalen DeBoer. I can't say Kalen DeBoer. For all of these idiotic Alabama fans, you cannot say Kalen DeBoer. Jesus. Mike Norvell.
Yeah, I think that's the easy one.
You go from a potential, undefeated regular season last year to
ACC
losing
champs.
Jordan Travis, ACC champs, and then starting with the Orange Bowl when you sat your whole team's either sat out or declared for the draft, and then
that was rough.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it for the crybaby Florida State fans, the ones that were super obnoxious the whole going into the bowl game, even after what happened after the bowl game.
Yeah.
Mind you, the biggest bowl victory of all time, thanks to their team quitting. But they spent the whole offseason complaining and crying. And, it was kind of like, yeah, y'all start the season off, you lose to Georgia Tech, you're crying about DJ, even though those wide receivers were dropping everything. I told y'all that. And then once you did bench DJ, you saw it for yourself. Like, damn, why are the wide receivers still dropping stuff? And I'm like, yeah, DJ's not special enough to overcome that. And y'all saw that this whole season. So, I mean, it sucks. It sucks for them. I got friends that are Florida State fans. Shout out to those guys. But, it's just one of those things where team could never put anything together. Both coordinators got fired. So now he's on the Gus bus. So that's the last resort. That's the last resort for. That's the last one. But my pick for most disappointing, Florida State is definitely an easy pick for me. But I'm going to say Ole Miss, Eric. I'm going to say Ole Miss. And the reason why I'm saying Ole Miss is after Georgia beat Ole Miss the previous season, Lane Kiffin said, for us to compete against a team like Georgia, Alabama, we have to change our mindset. We have to go get bigger, faster, stronger players. what we're currently doing isn't working. And I was all in on that. I said, you know what? That's showing you see where you're failing at. Let's make some changes. Let's get it going. Going into the season, a lot of us were hype about this Ole Miss team. They went into the transfer portal. They got some of the best out of the portal. If Walter Nolan, number
Yeah.
one defensive lineman, goes to Ole Miss. Ole Miss picked up plenty of players from the transfer portal. So they looked the part. They looked the part. And I mean, hell, when they were on fire, like you saw what they did to Georgia. Like it wasn't a point where Georgia looked like it was going to be a competitive game. It was, we're better than y'all on the line of scrimmage. We're going to dominate you. We're going to score a couple points, and it is what it is. Deal with it. It was one of those. It was just one of those. You're facing a behemoth.
Yep.
And that's what that team should have been all season. But they messed up. They lost that Florida game. Didn't they lose to Kentucky? Like, I want to say they lost to Kentucky.
I believe it was Kentucky.
Yeah, I think they lost to that Kentucky team. That was the unforgivable. Then to top off all of that, you're going toward the end of the season, and your coach flat out says, "Hey, I don't want to play in the SEC championship game because it's going to cost us a playoff run. We want to backdoor it." He publicly said that, and then lost
to Florida.
And then fucking lost to Florida. So with those losses, with the hype and build, combined with those losses, and your coach pretty much putting yourself out there like that, biggest disappointment for me. That was the biggest disappointment, because that Ole Miss team on paper is absolutely not only a playoff team. That team probably is playing in the national championship, in my opinion.
I don't disagree.
Yeah. So
because when they were winning, they were dominating
Alabama this year, so they could have easily skirted their way to the SEC championship.
They had
but
two
not
ranked
taking care
opponents.
of business cost them.
Yeah, exactly. It's so crazy. These SEC schedules, they're so crazy right now, man. Like, Texas's SEC schedule was bought and paid for. We all know that. And Ole Miss only had y'all and LSU to worry about. Like, come on, man.
Speaking of LSU, LSU is probably on my short list of disappointing teams also.
Yeah, LSU was kind of not great this year.
Yeah. I meant the way Jalen Milroe went in there and he set that bitch ablaze, man.
He ate. And they were feeling it the next week after when they lost to Florida too. Like,
right. The following week you lose to Florida after. Yeah, man, that's a disappointing team also.
Shout out the second half Billy Napier, man.
Boy. Yeah, Napier definitely saved himself. He saved himself. He saved himself with some solid wins against some disappointing teams. So shout out to him. I'll gladly accept another year of Billy Napier at Florida.
I bet you will.
If you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe, and of course look us up on socials at SuplexDinnerClub. And be sure to check out our other projects. We talk college football on DAWGS versus All Y'all. That's a weekly college football podcast where we don't just talk about the Georgia Bulldogs. We talk about all things college football. The Life and Times pod, which is short for the Life and Times of a Restaurant Lifer podcast, where I have some chill conversations with some cool and interesting people that I've met in my years in the hospitality industry. And of course, check out Talk 'em in the Building. That's a pro wrestling podcast where we solely focus on the promo. We talk about the talkers, we hype the hype man, and we pontificate on the promo. It's a fun project, and if you're a pro wrestling fan, I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. If you're into TV and movie reviews, check out Four Corners Cinema, with Ari and Adrian, a podcast where two lifelong pro wrestling fans review film and other forms of media that just so happen to have some of our favorite pro wrestlers. The Suplex Dinner Club family is growing, and I would love for you to be a part of it.